I think I'm going to, we're going to give it a couple minutes while we let people trickle in, as they say, before we go, just to make sure that we have the right thing. I might even go live now. You guys ready to hit the button just to see what happens? So it gives us 2 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
Here we go. See where it goes. First one, everybody.
Yeah, first one. I mean, we wouldn't know the difference. You're the only one who can actually see what's happening out there.
There it is. We're live.
Perfect.
We're live-ish. We're live adjacent.
Live adjacent.
Yeah. So let me and then what we'll do is we're going to go back into here, because I don't think that's happening on the actual event. This is click to join. And then I'm gonna put the link here. See if I can pin that. Let me have that sort of action. That's not very fun. So apparently it didn't broadcast it to the actual thing. Okay. So hi, everybody. Welcome to a live stream of what happens when you don't get to test actual live wonderful world of LinkedIn. So we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to trickle in here. Hopefully find that link that I posted in the event, in the actual event opening there. Apologies for that. I had a feeling this was going to kind of happen here, just because it's kind of a roundabout way. You have to put like keys in and everything, and you're not allowed to link your Zoom to your LinkedIn until this lobby actually opens. So I'm going to jump around and just put a couple of links in for folks. If you haven't found it, we'll make it happen. We're going to get a bunch of people in there. We're going to make this happen. We're going to have a good time today. So everybody just bear with us just for a couple minutes. We'll let everybody try and get in. I don't know if they're going to show us how many people are actually here on the stream, but either way, I see we got Pete in here, so that's a good sign. So people are finding it somehow, some way. So we'll just give it a couple minutes, everybody.
Yeah, we are experiencing the magic of Zoom being its own thing and Teams being its own thing, which should be, we have this great marketplace full of choices. So what we actually have is this like fragmentation of technology. We get to stumble through like so many businesses do.
Yeah, it's a good time. I mean, I think the pandemic was pretty interesting for how we all settled into what tools we use for collaboration in a remote environment. So that's been super interesting to try and navigate there at the same time, but as we all settle into the tools, and then you have to you call up one company like, well, we're not allowed to use Zoom, or we're not allowed to use Teams, so we use Google over here. Then you have some wild card come in every once in a while,
Yeah, I think it's that thing where people like identify by what they consume, right? Like, remember during the pandemic where people like, which vaccine did you get, right? And like, right? It's like same thing, right? It's like, oh, I'm joining a meeting. Oh, this is a Teams meeting. Oh, this is a Google Meet. Oh, this is Zoom, right? And you just you walk in with some sort of leading assumption about the organizer just based off of the things like, no, that's just BS. We just kind of all settled into our own things.
Let's give it a couple more minutes. Let's see how everything's looking here on the monitor. It's quite a delay in this, actually. It's a good like 30-second delay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, content distribution is probably pretty tough over a global network.
So how are you guys doing? While we're letting everybody come in, let's just talk about the day, so that way we can get the fun, easy stuff, out of the way before we get to the meat and the bones, while we give people the time to find my wonderful world of new links. We got 13 people in here so far. We're shooting for 3,000, but we'll see how close we get to that number. So how's your guys' week been? It is Wednesday.
It's a little nuts in my end of the world. Like a lot of things going on in Spec, personal life. So my wife is a filmmaker. So from time to time, she'll go down to LA. She like specializes in these like small budget films that feature lots of like women and people of color. So she's gone for like 5 days on shoot. So I'm like, CEO of Spec and also solo, dog dad. And that's always like a very special period of time where I'm like in and out of the office, taking care of these runs and coordinating all that.
Has she had any sort of issues with like the writer's strike going on down here? That's a pretty big deal. We're at day 50 right now.
Yeah. So like all of the writing part of her works had to stop. And even this shoot that she's going on, they're literally going down because SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, is talking about potentially a strike at the end of the month. So like, oh, we need to get all this in the can before the actor strike might potentially happen. Otherwise, like this, this whole project goes off the rails. So it's a little nuts in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, it's like living down here, I got a lot of friends that are obviously working in that industry, and it's been interesting because they had a lot of scripts done like in that, and so that's been a thing. So they can shoot those. However, like any sort of rewrites and stuff that happen, they can't really shoot those. Like so they can't change the script, which is because then you're kind of you're rewriting and and that's kind of gnarly. So what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a little bit of time where we have a bunch of reality TV. It's going to be different than the last time when they did it about 15 years ago. It's just going to be a ton of reality TV that's going to be happening. So that'll be very fun for people that like that, but not a lot of fun for people like me that like really good scripted television. I just wish that they would just pay the damn writers. Like,
Yeah, for
I mean, they're
sure.
making tons of money. We see these. I know Hollywood accounting's a big thing down here where they make every film make it look like it's losing money, but I mean, the studios do make money, and
Oh yeah.
they'll find a way to make more money. I mean, we're shoving advertising into everything on all these films, so just do more of that, you know?
Yeah. There's been this like, this interesting thing. It's like, oh, we'll save a bunch of money by having like a, writer, director, producer, like multi-hat. It's like, but what you've actually done is you've like put someone vital on your staff who's a member of 3 different labor unions, right? So like you have to have like all the stars and moon align in order for them to actually be able to work. So I think some productions are running into that problem in a pretty big way.
Absolutely. And then Patrick, how are you doing before we jump in here?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Just working with customers and, occasionally trying to get around to golfing.
Yeah, I'm playing on Monday again, and I'm playing on next Sunday the 2nd up in Oregon when I go see
Oh,
my buddy.
nice.
Yeah, so I'll be good golfing with my brother on that Sunday up
Did you,
there.
did you get a new set of clubs yet?
I didn't. I need to go get them refitted because I am like 9 feet tall and I have to
Yeah.
hunch over when I hit. But I played a couple of weeks ago and I shot pretty well with those gloves. I think it's because I've been playing more, which I'm really enjoying. But I still like my sweet spot of playing 9. But it's just hard to get other people that want, because everybody else wants to play 18 and I want to play 9. But because I like to hit the clubhouse.
You just hit the clubhouse while they play the second 9.
That's not a bad call. I'll see you guys afterwards and I'll be a little different shape when you come in. So I think what we can do here is we're starting to get a decent amount of people trickling in. So let's jump into some of the content. We will kind of start with some of your guys' backgrounds to give a couple more minutes of trickle in before we get into the meat and bones. And one of the things that like I even wanted to do this today was I wanted to bring you guys in to talk about Spec specifically, and we're going to kind of drop this banner down a little bit here so we can see each other in a little larger fashion. But I wanted to talk to you guys specifically about your product and what it does. And orchestration is currently a word that we're hearing a lot. And in this industry, we are no strangers to buzzwords and what those things are. Everybody says they had machine learning. Everybody said they had AI, and AI is back. But orchestration is a newer word that people are talking about. And I was just at a conference last week in Nashville, and there was 2 different main stage presentations where they mentioned orchestration. And I think that there was a lot of confusion as to what that is and what that means. And I think you guys are one of the leaders in this space, specifically in what you do in this fraud, in chargebacks, payments, and customer journey. So I wanted to have you guys here to talk about your product specifically and have me ask you what I think it means and what it does, and then just kind of clear the air on the differences there. And hopefully some folks in the audience that might be watching this stream would have a pretty good idea coming away from this, maybe a clearer picture of what it is, to say, and have those aha moments. So I want to start with you guys, Nate and Patrick. You guys each introduce yourselves in the order that you would choose to. Go over your history, if we could, real briefly here, and then we will dive into specifically what Spec is and what it does. And I will start asking some questions about that. So how does that sound, guys?
Sounds
That's
great.
great.
Yeah. Patrick, I'm gonna let you kick it off.
All right. I'm Patrick Chen, co-founder and COO at Spec. Been working in startups for, probably 15 years now. Just always found myself at the, meeting point of business and technology problems. And this, what we get to talk about today, I think is, kind of at the intersection of a business and technology problem. So super stoked to be, chatting with you and your listeners about that. Worked at Threat Metrics, where I met Nate.
Yeah.
We went to eBay to do a big payments initiative with eBay, and then I went to Payrix to help build out their onboarding and transaction monitoring product. And then we decided to found Spec because we just faced the same type of problem everywhere we went.
Yeah, all right, awesome. Yeah, and I'll take over from Patrick. Yeah, so Nate Carl, co-founder, CEO here at Spec. Yeah, like Patrick, been in the tech industry since I think 2007, 2008. It's been, really got things kicking off for me. I think during my time at Akamai, where we were doing initial deployment of security services at the edge. So like joined when that was like $0 in revenue, went to about 300 million by the time I left. It was this amazing business of how do we take things that used to live in boxes or like, in systems that are deep inside of data centers, how do we pull those out? We solve these problems on the internet. And then eventually went to Threat Metrics, where it ran the global engagement team. So just think about the pre-sales, implementation, post-sales, and the analysts at Threat who were helping some of the biggest brands in the world build their fraud stacks and solve evolving problems related to threat metrics and kind of beyond. And then ultimately went with Patrick over to we went to eBay together to effectively build a ton of different risk products from the ground up as we were displacing PayPal, who used to be taking care of all that for eBay with Adyen. Which is this amazing experience of what could you do when you're kind of bolting on this $2 billion payments business. So you effectively have this blank check to build as much risk product as you can, as quickly as you can. And we ran into this same class of problem over and over again. We knew that something like Spec was the answer. I think we had like dreams about this from as early as 2014, writings on napkins in 2017. And it wasn't until the pandemic really kicked off, they're like, oh no, there's no time that's going to be better to actually make this thing happen than now. And I think that the rest is recent history.
Yeah. And I worked with you guys, during your time over at Threat Metrics. I was a customer, a longtime customer at multiple different companies. So I was familiar with you guys. And then after the buyout, watched where you guys kind of went. And then it's interesting to see you guys come back together, like all of you guys, get the band back together. I always thought you guys were a very talented group of people. So I'm happy to see that you guys have found each other again and are working together again, because I thought that the Threat Metrics product was always a great product. So that means that great people had to create a great product. And then now that you guys are back together, I'm sure the product here is going to be great as well, and is great. You guys have been very kind to me to be a sponsor of me over this last quarter. So I'm really happy about that. But obviously myself, we have been looking at the product with you guys at my company for a while to try and find a fit there. So happy to be moving forward in some capacity there as well. So let's talk about orchestration. And let's talk about that word. So I think all of these things, Nate, like your time in Akamai is going to really come into play. And Patrick, obviously your long time over at Threat Metrics too, is come together to create an interesting product. And orchestration is just how I think about it. And this is how it happens in my mind. And we'll talk about like what it means historically, how we had things, and how I envision this coming forward in the future. But orchestration to me is what we would think of as a payment gateway, but for everything else. So payment gateways included, but for fraud tools. So I would, and this is going to be the wrong word, but I would essentially integrate to you guys. And then when I integrate to you guys, I have a marketplace or a connector to all of these other tools and partners that you guys might have, as well as partners that you don't have, but that I want, that you could connect to. So I only have to connect to you. And then from there, I get all of these things. And for me, in my head, since I do this job every day, and I have changes in my threats that happen every single day, is the cool thing that I think about for me is if I had that right now, and all of a sudden my team launched a whole new product that required something like ID verification or email checking or something, I could just turn that on. And that's really, really, really powerful. Now, for me, in my reality of my actual world right now, one of the things that I'm thinking about the most that I could use you guys, and we'll talk about this in more detail, is historically we've run some sort of like POC with our vendors by giving them historical data. They crunch the numbers. And they said, this is what we could have done. This is what you're at, and blah, blah, blah. And you find a win. But there's no time and no better way to run a POC than doing it on live data. And with you guys, I envision in my head that I would be able to select like 3 vendors from this type. Like there's email verifications, there's IDV, there's fraud, there's chargebacks, there's payment processors. And I would be able to side by side compare those literally by just checking those things on. So this is what's happening in my head. So if you guys could talk about that, and we'll talk about how it integrates to you, to how we get to you. But does that make any sense?
It does, but like this is, so I'm like a long time like Dungeons and Dragons nerd, right? So like run tables, do all this stuff like that. And players will have ideas, and like, the key word is always yes and, right? It's just like yes and, right? So I think a lot of people use the word orchestration, even the way that you're using it now, it sounds a lot like, oh yeah, this is API calls and workflows, right? Which is like, it is a part of orchestration. Like you blow this thing out bigger to what orchestration actually is like. So there's like a big crunchy definition of orchestration that you can look up on Wikipedia. But like the way that we think about this, we talk about this is, orchestration is the practice of activating data in real time. So having to integrate an API, having to manage through these workflows is one piece of it. The bigger sense comes from like, if you think about all the internal projects that your team does. So are you sourcing new data out of the customer journey or out of their interactions? Are you implementing vendors like you're talking about? Are you connecting your backend tools? Are you changing the way that you would like reshape a customer journey based off of all of these data points? These are all orchestration projects. Historically, you're going to give these all to your internal software developers to do. That ends up on their backlog. Our approach and our approach to orchestration is holistic. It is all of it, from data collection to organizing how you connect to all your tools to how you actually shape that end user journey. So like, yes, everything that you're saying and everything that's upstream of that and downstream of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
The practical application of that, Jordan, is just really, I break it down into like see, understand, and act, right? So being able to see everything in the customer journey allows you to identify anomalies, right? So are people doing inventory abuse? Are there actors that are doing account takeover, like automated attacks? Identifying that is, the first part, and the understanding by seeing how they progress through your site, how they're doing that, potentially why they're doing that is the second piece. And then finally, once you identify there's a problem, you understand the MO, you can take action much faster. And that's what we mean by orchestration. That's the yes and. It's not just connecting to an IDV solution. It's not just seeing a session replay. It's like the whole entire flow of all of that data seamlessly working together in service of you and what your team's trying to do.
Excellent. So historically, when we would go through our fraud processes, for example, we would have a long drawn out process where we would be looking at the different types of tools in the marketplace. So if we wanted something that was more automated, more hands-on, more rules-based, more AI-based, we would go through this long drawn out process and pick a tool. And then we would kind of be married to that tool for a while. So usually there's a longer development process of putting some sort of JavaScript on checkout pages. And that's kind of where we started, was we always kind of put them on the checkout page. And then we kind of moved more towards putting some stuff up on like the login pages, sometimes on account create, sometimes on like gift card checking and all those things. But there was always a spot that we had to pick, and then we had to deploy something, and then we had to like do some sort of API call to you guys, JSON, XML, whatever it may be, to send you guys information so that they could actually make the determination on what we do, whether that be score based, whether that be like decision based, whatever the result might be. A lot of the problems that came with that was like, you would kind of get, like I said, married to those solutions because it's difficult to do any sort of integration to that. And on top of that, like what you guys were just talking about, is you only get that data when the customer actually does that action. So if the customer doesn't do that specific action, you don't get that data. You don't get anything. They could have been hovering around. They could have been hanging around. They could have been trying to exploit it. And if they didn't click like that checkout button, for example, that session might have not existed to you guys unless you had another check earlier. So a lot of these problems is like, we would see things happen that were at a point that wasn't necessarily where we had put this fraud tool that we just spent 18 months developing. And then we would find exploits. Like a great example is like, we had a recent spat of card testing against our site, and there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that we did do. So like nothing was wrong there, but it just was something that was happening. And we had wanted like to put something there, but we didn't want to put any friction in there. Like we didn't want to put too much friction in there. So it would have been nice if we could have just jumped in and secured that endpoint with an additional product quickly if we wanted to, instead of having to do a whole actual process where we actually are now working on putting a whole new call to our existing fraud tool even earlier in the process than we had initially wanted to, because we don't want to run into a lot of friction. Like our false positives we care about, but it's just something that like it's taking time now. We have to scope out the size of the project. We have to get developers involved. We have to bump their projects and then do a whole new deployment. When I think with what you guys are doing is changing how we can approach doing that piece, but as well as looking at all the noise. So like a website like it's as busy as mine gets, like 46 million unique sessions on it a month. And we don't like, of what logs in is still in the millions, but it's like 70% of that, is just, we saw them on there. We know they're not bots. They're doing something. They're browsing through products. They're looking at things. They might be scraping data, no, but they're doing something. And you guys kind of give us the visibility into that by the way that you integrate, the way that we would connect to you. So let's talk about how we as merchants would connect to you guys in a different fashion that's different than how we would traditionally do this, and then what the byproduct of that is, if we could.
Totally. Yeah. And you're talking about setting up a new checkpoint earlier in the customer journey with new data flowing to it. Man, that sounds like an orchestration project, right? Like at its core, it's another orchestration project. So, and that's the core of it. It is, if you think about how your site would operate on the internet, if no one visited it, like 0 people, if it was just like cold, right? Nothing would happen, right? It's the visits, it's the views, it's the interaction that really trigger everything off. So instead of the way that everything else in this space deploys, where it is something that you have to call deep in your backend, we sit out on the edge of the internet and we watch that same user interactions that your site sees. So the same things that trigger your application to render pages, present checkout pages, to light up order systems in order to ship product. We watch those same interactions and then give you the ability to orchestrate all of your connections, orchestrate all of your workflows, collect whatever data off of those interaction streams that you need in order to power those decisions, to power those tools, and to drive that forward, right? So instead of all of these orchestration projects that you would chase internally as like a back-end development project, you're actually getting that done on our platform with clicks instead of code, right?
Excellent. So let's talk really about like what you get as far as visibility goes. So what do you guys see, and what does that mean for us as merchants?
Yeah, what we see is every interaction, right? I think you hit the nail on the head, Jordan. So if we take a real customer example for account logins, right? From our time at ThreatMetrics and you working with ThreatMetrics, you probably hook up the API call at login success, right? So when when I have the right credentials, you'll do a risk assessment, you'll figure out what's going on. For our customer, we saw 700,000 login attempts over a 4-hour period with 12 successful login attempts, right? So that contrast between understanding the risk in, kind of looking at 700,000 unsuccessful login attempts, like the pattern of behavior, the IP addresses that are being used, and looking at it from just the context of 12 successful logins is massive. So the importance of the visibility that we provide is orders of magnitude more than what a standard, implementation might have.
So I think like where my mind kind of goes with that is like, everybody has a CDN because that's how we would connect to you guys. And there's a certain amount of bot mitigation and things like that happens there. But I don't think what people realize is there's a lot of stuff that isn't bots that still is noise on their sites. And there's value in knowing what people are doing on your site and how they're interacting, not only for trying to stop bad actors. Like I don't want to like not all traffic that's in that noise is bad. It's probably largely a good amount of customers on there and they're up to something. And it can help you figure out how to convert those customers. Where are they stopping? Where are they going? Is there a frustration point on there? Like I know there's a lot of companies that do like the session replay stuff, and I'm sure you guys have some partners in that space that they could use your technology to do that, and it could be very valuable. Like we found across multiple websites that I've ever used these sorts of tools on like the session replay stuff on like pain points, like where things just were broken, they weren't even working, and that was why the customers disappeared just because that piece that we thought was working wasn't even working, or they were clicking in the wrong area, or the art wasn't quite right. There's a lot in there that can be found in that. But as far as like what you get out of having a platform with this customer journey thing, I think there's two parts. For me in my head, there's two major parts. There's getting all of that customer data and knowing what they're up to, where they're coming from, where they're going, what they're doing on the site. What is all that noise, all those like 40 million that you might not necessarily know what they're up to. And then the options that I have to change things and improve things on the fly. So, I mean, if we could kind of just talk about some of the partners, and if you guys have any more real world examples of like maybe what you guys did with this 700,000 for the one client that you have right now that had this issue, like what did you guys do? What were some of the options? What were the results of that, if we could?
Yeah, totally. And I'll let like Patrick get into like the deeper piece on the customer examples. I think, anyone who's been following like our journey along this, you may remember that a year ago we weren't Spec, we were Spec Trust. And what happened as soon as we started selling our, into some of these businesses, they were so impressed by what we were doing for fraud and abuse teams that marketing teams wanted to get involved, infosec teams wanted to get involved, our core commerce teams and these customers, they wanted to get involved, and they're like, oh, this is a much bigger platform than specifically around like the fraud orchestration piece of it. And that's a lot of what like let us understand, it's like, okay, like we need to actually kind of take a step back and like look at what we've actually built and how the market wants to use it. And we've seen that come up in our customers over and over. But yeah, I'll let Patrick kind of take on some of the specifics.
Yeah, for our multiple customers, one of our other customers utilizes us in a strictly guest checkout flow, and really understanding what consumers are doing gives immense visibility, right? So a typical orchestrated checkpoint is at the point of payment, right? But what happens before that payment, right? If it's tickets to an event, an individual or an attacker could be abusing access to the tickets. So we'll actually see reseller abuse that's coming in to hold tickets. We can see how long somebody's held tickets and identify patterns such as a particular session where somebody held tickets for 24 hours, right? That's tickets that you or Nate or I and our families don't get access to because somebody's held them for a ridiculous amount of time, right? And never resulted in a checkout.
Reservation abuse is such a bigger problem than people realize. So reservation abuse on tickets, on hotels, even on inventory. Like we have had challenges in the past where people cart inventory and try and hold it too long. I mean, it was something that we were aware that they were trying to do. So we were changing where we would pull inventory from things. It's a really hard balance to try and find like when to pull inventory correctly, because you don't want someone to cart something and then an hour later try and check out and then have it be gone, but at the same time, like you don't want to tie up the inventory for somebody else if they're just sitting there in the cart having it there for 24 hours. So that's a very challenging thing. And yeah, but ticketing, reservation abuse, I think everybody's always aware of that one, because that kind of changes when you can kind of, people get so mad and they're like, I see it on the resale market already. A lot of that's speculative. Like they're just holding the tickets in their cart right now while they try to see what's going on with the resale market before they actually make the purchase. So yes, reservation abuse is a way bigger problem than people realize. But continue, please.
And even outside of reservation abuse, like we're seeing, more and more marketing dollars being moved towards like affiliates and influencer channels, which are very much driven on scarcity sales and like these like big event pushes. And in those type of environments, there is generally a limited capacity to ship, if it's like some sort of artificial scarcity, and like they need the real timeness to really understand what's happening and unblock problems there, because it's a rife area for abuse, especially as you're thinking about how these affiliates get compensated.
Absolutely. Affiliate thing. We're starting up a new affiliate channel too. This morning I just found out too. So I have to go into some documentation about that. But I think we're using third-party affiliates for that. So they're just like, what's going to happen? I'm like, well, churn's going to happen. That's for dang sure on that one, but nothing we can really do about that. And hopefully the affiliate partner has some sort of, maybe they need to call you guys.
We have solutions.
There we go, Patrick, but please continue. Sorry, I jumped over in the middle there. I just get excited when I hear people talk about things like reservation abuse.
No, totally. And what you described is an orchestration project, right? So how do you treat different cohorts of customers through the flow, right? Do you want to let a certain cohort keep items in their cart for longer, right? Based on their total customer lifetime value spent with you. That's an orchestration problem, right? You have to hit your, client data platform to find out like that information, orchestrate a call, and then change the outcome for that particular cohort, right? Versus some brand new customer like that, maybe you want to just dump that card after 24 hours.
So we can do it even in that granular with like, oh, that's pretty interesting there. I mean, that's a really great idea, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's these are the types of orchestration products that take a huge amount of investment from your engineering teams, right? If you think about moving that checkpoint you described, earlier, that takes a huge amount of work. Now, if you wanted to build in the logic to switch between the two, or even add a third checkpoint, that's all orchestration projects, right? So we could do that in a number of clicks in one connection to Spec, and then in a couple of clicks in our platform to change that workflow to call out to third parties at different times. These are the orchestration projects that Nate was referencing that Spec takes off the plate of our customers, merchants, marketplaces, or fintechs.
And we can use like completely custom like APIs too, like stuff that you guys might not even be official partners with too, right? You guys want to talk about your little open API situation a little bit?
Yeah, from a technology perspective, there's a ton of pieces of secret sauce. I think the core of it is like, hey, we want to be able to operate on anything that happens on the internet. Doesn't matter which applications we're protecting. Doesn't matter what tools or data sources we're connecting to. So the way that Spec works is we don't have these like hard-coded connectors in the back to specific partners. We can literally move data from anywhere to anywhere. If it's a REST API, we can effectively move it across. So our customers typically will show up. They have this big backlog of orchestration projects. We identify who the different tools and endpoints, and all we effectively need are the API keys, and we're good to go. We're off to the races. We have a UX to handle that. If you're more technical, if you've used something like Postman before, you can use Spec to configure an API connection to pretty much anywhere.
That's pretty great right there. I think like I just keep going through like all these things in my head. Is like when I was running this POC that we did last year, if I would have had something where, because what happened with us is like we had an idea of some vendors that we wanted to POC specifically just to see, and we liked our existing vendor. It was just a little more hands-on than we needed it to be. And iHerb is a interesting company. For those that don't know, we run health and wellness products, not weed, health and wellness products in 188 countries. Now, we do have a couple of things happening like on Chase offers and on Amex offers right now, but a lot of times people here in the US are kind of like, I've never heard of iHerb. But outside of the US, iHerb is a household name. But a lot of the markets that we have as our core markets are more challenging markets. Like it's underserved, underbanked. So that's why we have a lot of success there, is like we are offering products that people have a desire to have, but don't have an easy way to obtain. But with that comes a lot of challenges with people that are trying to exploit things, or people that are bad actors, trying to game the system, use fraudulent sources of payment or funding to get these products, and then usually resell them or do some sort of other action with them. But historically, when we have been writing fraud rules or addressing fraud trends, it is more of a reactive way than a proactive way. So we went to market to try and see if we had the best option that we didn't have to be so reactive, and maybe have something that would surface things to our attention a little more. And we had wanted to POC a number of vendors, but the problem is like one of them we had already started a little bit of development on, and then I kind of pulled back the contract on that one, and wasn't quite the tool that I wanted to use when I joined. And that kind of frustrated some of our developers because they had obviously been spending a tremendous amount of time working on this project. And then, so one of the other ones, we were a little further down the road, so we were moving forward with that. But the third one that I really wanted to see how they did, we were not able to finish the test on that because of the Ukraine and Russia conflict happening, where we were heavily in the Russian market. It's no secret. We talked about it many a times in a lot of our press and everything. So we had to stop doing business with this country, which then obviously had a financial harm to our business as an overall situation. And we had to adjust to that. Now we're coming out of this very well, like anybody could see in press releases. iHerb's having a good time now, but at the time, like we had to evaluate what's the projects we were working on. And one of them that got scrapped was POCing the third vendor, and actually ended up being the second vendor on there too. So we only went with the incumbent versus the new one that we are now. We just press release that we went with Riskified as our new provider. But it would have been so much easier and so much nicer if I had been able to run the POC through something like you guys, where I could have just picked the ones I wanted, or even brought in another one that you guys aren't partnered with and say, hey, here, connect to this real quick, the REST API all day, resting. But you know, it's just, for me, it's such a big thing on what we could have done had we had this, to me. And I keep going back to that. I know I talk about it all the time. I just want to really drive that point home. I talked to you guys, Patrick, when we were in Dallas. I talked to you about it. It's just such a game changer for how we evaluate solutions. And I think that, like, for years, like, I've used the big boys at other companies for years. And some of the reasons that we stay with the big boys is because it's so difficult to change anything. And it's just like, we can't try these new technologies, and we hope that they will develop these new technologies. And they often try in some sort of capacity to develop these technologies. But sometimes I just want to try the new hotness just to see if I could get a lift. Like when we switched from our last tool, which was great, by the way, it was just more hands-on than we needed it to be, but it has completely revolutionized how we have been approaching fraud fighting at this company, and has made especially our markets where we were more critical about, we have been way more accepting of those customers, and way more people are getting their products based on the additional technology that we get and using these new emerging technologies. So I put a ton in there, guys. If you guys would like to comment on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this when we were at Threat all the time. It's like, you know, it's like, hey, we really, you know, believe in this product. We think we're going to outperform everything. We'll let you POC it for free, right? And our customers, you know, and prospects that when we were at Threat, we're always like, yeah, but free's not really free. Like, I have to spend up this, you know, these development resources. Like, I think the smallest number I was ever quoted by a prospect when I was at Threat was $60,000, right? Some of them were huge. Like, it's like $1 million to try it, right? But like $60,000. So if the smallest number is $60,000, that's a really nice truck, right? That's a really nice truck, right? So like, if that is, you know, what it takes to try out a product for free, how
and you only get like 30 days. Like, so you spend like 6 months trying to develop this, sign in DPAs, sign in MSAs, and then you got 30 days. And you hope that like the issue that you're trying to address is maybe inside that 30-day window. Because if it's not, you have no idea. Like, and then, so 30 days to decide if you're going to be married to a solution for 3 years, you're coming off of a solution that you've been with for 15 years. Bonkers to me. Absolutely bonkers.
Oh, and 3 years is cute, right? You know, like, it's not always 3 years. I think a couple times a month we bump into someone who's like, oh, what's in your fraud stack right now? And they're like, it's a word, it's a name and a face. So they just say iovation, and their face just kind of like does this thing, right? It's just like, okay, I get it. Like, you like you want out, you just are having a hard time doing it, right? Which is no slight to TransUnion. Like, no, you guys provide a lot of value.
They were iovation was first on the device ID thing. That they were the pioneers in that space. So
totally,
got to give them that.
Exactly. But you know, it's just like, but we find people's like, oh yeah, like we're looking to try some of the easier words, like the new hotness, right? And it's just getting that prioritized is just so hard, right? But yeah, like, I know, Patrick, you bump into this even more than I do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more than just trying the new hotness. I think, Jordan, we talked about like making sure the new hotness works for you, right? I think each one of these vendors has like a really critical piece in your fraud stack, and finding out what exactly that value is and how it might help in a geographically dispersed, you know, business like iHerbs, right? It's not a guarantee that every single vendor performs the best in all the different geos that you care about, right? And being able to access the hotness for North America, for Europe, for APAC, South America, et cetera, is super critical to your business.
Absolutely. And so, you know, we've been approaching fraud fighting, I think, at this company, especially in a more strategic fashion as far as like geos do go. And I, you know, that's an excellent point to make, is like, there is not one fraud tool fits them all. You know, this isn't the Highlander of fraud. It's like, you might need a different tool for a different area. And some things I might need more things than I might need others. Like, I might need to email verify, you know, everybody in the US, or I might need to address verify everybody in the US, but that's not going to work when I'm trying to ship to lockers in Russia. You know, like, there's a very different need for each individual region. And if I'm using a tool here, I might not need to use a tool there. And the same thing, like, I think this just comes back to me in my head, thinking about like the same thing how we did for like payment gateways, is like, a lot of people don't use the same PSP globally. They pick out which PSP is right for the right region, and they kind of go for there. And like, I think even like needing multiple PSPs for like fallback for issues, you know, like if you're a global company, billion-dollar company, and your payment processor goes down, which usually they say they don't, but they do, you need to be able to have a cutover. Or if something breaks on your side, you need to have a cutover, you know, or if Visa or MasterCard decide to shut off your authorizations, you need to have something that you can jump to. So can you guys talk a little bit about payment orchestration and what options you guys might have there for that sort of thing? Do you guys have something there?
Totally. Yeah. And I think we can even talk, a customer example. So like one of the things that we bump into is that we'll work with a large company. They will sign a global agreement to provide some sort of service, if that's transaction risk assessments, if that's payments, what have you. And then they find out, they get into a new geo, and their transaction decline rate is triple what it is in that new geo from everything else, right? So we're running into that right now with one of our customers, where they were pretty sure they had like the perfect mix to get it around the globe. And it's not performing the way that they need to in one specific geo. So like what we've been able to do in Spec is like, one, like stop the bleeding in terms of, okay, let's like look at your customers. It's a large cart total, kind of going through, you're getting to a transaction decline. We're giving them a custom experience. We're creating workflow for, that customer's team to reach out and try to manually kind of like close those transactions, because these are really big ticket orders. But also even setting up like, okay, cool. Like if we're delivering this to someone who is, in this geo, this geo is like where the actual customer lives. Let's put this through different payment rails. Let's put this through different transaction risk scoring, that is better tuned to perform is better in this environment. The historical one size fits all is something that, it's been kind of pushed from a complexity perspective. Because if you think about the internal orchestration work of like, no, different geos get different things. It's like, no way, right? It's hard enough to stay up, on one globally. But like we're making that just a ton easier.
But can I ask you with that particular client, like when they started encountering these issues to when you could help them address those issues, what was the time, like the time length in there?
There was something that bubbled up over the weekend. Someone sent like a panicked email to the leadership on a Sunday. We found out about that on a Monday morning, and then we had that new flow built out by Monday afternoon, right? Yeah, so like it was really fast for us to get them into a spot where they can start to recover, that lost revenue. The thing now is literally just the contracting and procurement part of like figuring out who's going to be, in that geo, their preferred provider for payments and risk.
Yeah, that's why I think everybody should maybe start looking. It used to be like kind of taboo to have more than one like payment processor. Like it was just like, that's kind of cheating. It's kind of unfair. But like now it's so critical is to be up and to be able to take a payment that you almost can't afford to not have multiple payment processors, especially if you're a global business, like where you're really diversified. Like things change geopolitically, as I know at this business, like literally overnight. And then you can't do business there tomorrow. So you have to be able to figure out what you're going to do, where you're going to go next, and how you're going to change some of that up. So
yeah, Jordan, let me ask you a question. If you needed to get all your payment processors of choice around the globe hooked up, how long do you think that would take for a business the scale of iHerb?
The business the scale of iHerb, 18 months probably. I mean, I think we could probably do, if we really put all hands on deck, we could probably do it in probably like 9 to 10, maybe even 11 months. But it's all the work that comes before. I mean, payment processing is a serious situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how we make our money. And like, I know the percentages of my business that go through like credit cards, for example. Like we take 39 different payment methods here. So like basically if you're in any geography that has a preferred payment method, like we probably take it most likely, but hooking all of those things in can be challenging sometimes because not everything hooks into our PSP exactly. So some of those we have to do direct connections and those take time, but to switch our actual payment processing would take a very, very, very long time because we have to go to market, do the RFP. We have to do the contract. We have to do a ton of PII situations. We have to figure out how it's going to work on tokenization, how it's going to work on authorizations, how we're going to do card updaters, all these things. How are we going to do the actual integration? Are we doing a custom actual checkout flow in our actual page? Are we doing a hosted payments page? Are we fully doing a redirect? Which some geos need a redirect, not all of them. Like you can't, hopefully nobody's saying, oh, you don't want to do a redirect. Some actually expect a redirect. So you got to do it that way. But it can be a lot of work. By the time we actually go live with testing, even it's probably going to be several months down the road. And then if the test goes into successful, we're probably at least a year on a minimum out of there, and like that's frightening to me if I was to have one. Like, what happens if it breaks? What happens if we get shut off? Like what happens if they go out of business? Like thankfully we have multiple ones because we have a lot of merchant of record processing in other territories like South America, where like we don't necessarily have an entity, so we have to use merchant of record processing there. But it's something that we are constantly looking at. I think people underestimate the cost of payments at their business. I think they just kind of take for granted, like, oh, we have a solution that's working. So we think, and it's working in all these, but they don't really drill down into the fees as much as they should be. They don't look at like what the tech stack is. They don't look at the connections and the partners. Like you might not have the most popular payment method in Singapore. You might not have the right payment method at all in Singapore, or now, in Brazil is a great example. Was historically, like, it's always been like boletos and then a little bit of credit cards mixed in. And then almost overnight, like I think it was in 2021, they started Pix by the government, and like I actually just recorded an episode yesterday about faster payments. It's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks, and we talk about Pix, and like that went to like 83% adoption in like a month. And if you didn't have Pix, like you were kind of going to be dead in the water pretty soon. And these are things that I think is like, we always are talking about faster and how can we react to everything faster. And in fraud specifically, everybody that's listening to this has known an issue has popped up overnight that you needed to address. And how do you address it? What do you need to address it? Well, hopefully you could go in and write some rules. Historically, you've gone in and write some rules, and then you answer. But what if your fraud tool doesn't have what you need it to have? Then what are you going to do? Okay, so all of a sudden, like your fraud tool has never told you the email reputation. So you can block a domain or you can block the emails. You block a domain, tomorrow they're just going to add another letter to the domain, or they're going to put like a subdomain in the email domain, and then they're back in business. So you're playing this whack-a-mole thing. If you have like intelligence around an email provider, like let's say an Emailage, for example, or even an Icona is a great example where they give you a little bit more intelligence about that. They can say that email domain doesn't even exist, and then you know what to do with that. But what if you didn't already have that? So all of a sudden you're getting attacked by all these subdomains in this specific region, and then you don't have any way to vet those outside of just sitting here and having somebody block those things or sending everything to manual review that's coming through that channel. That sounds daunting if you're a business that has any sort of actual volume in any sort of level. But I guess with you guys, I've already thought about this, is I could just click on my email provider, get what I need out of it until hopefully this thing goes away, or maybe move on to a more permanent basis, what it would be. But firing these things strategically, this isn't an all or nothing thing. And based on what I've heard, you guys would help me say like, okay, these transactions coming out of like China, they need to be hit with this specific tool that then goes to this tool, and then we let them go through, or where do they come from? Like, where do they come from? Where do they go? Fraud eye, Joe. But like, we could figure that stuff out. And it's for me, it's kind of exciting that there are these sorts of options that we could have using a tool like you guys. Now, I just put a ton of information in there, so let's talk about
and
that.
It's absolutely critical in my opinion, right? So if you look at card tech, like not just hooking up these different forms of payment, which was part of the challenge that Nate and I experienced at eBay, right? Forms of payment around the globe and trying to do all of that at the same time was insane, right? It took forever. But like there's like multiplication factors of complexity, right? Like, for each of those forms of payment, you might want to do a pre-auth or a post-auth check, depending on the riskiness of that payment method, right? And I would say even with credit card payments, why not both, right? At some points, you might want to do a, post-auth risk assessment, because why would you want to check the riskiness of it if you know that you can't even accept that payment, right? But other times, if you're under a card testing attack, wouldn't you want to put your risk provider in front of that, right? So that you're not getting 10,000 auth attempts without a successful capture, right? So having the ability to kind of slice and dice and build workflows, not just to send to different forms of payments, but within those forms of payments to at different times or per different form of payment to do different types of checks, an email check, risk, payment risk check. All of that is really important to the health of your business, and more importantly, to get that conversion factor to revenue that businesses need to survive.
So I want to talk just like ever so slightly as we start to wrap things up here. We are almost at time here, is just like some of the ideas about like where things like this, like, so, okay, if I had a problem crop up like right now, like let's say I have someone that's like just abusing my refunds or churning rewards points, and I wanted to drop a tool in on that. How quickly, in reality, in actual time, could I go from making a phone call to you and say, I have this specific problem happening, here's where it is, that we could deploy a solution that I'm not using currently, like completely not using like anything.
So your time frame is hours, but the reality is, and like this is like the first thing that people realize when they get onto our platform, you probably already have the data that you need to isolate this problem and shut it down. You probably don't need to go find another tool. You probably have enough information in how they're interacting with your site compared to your regular users and what that pattern looks like. If you don't, right, connecting another tool is really as simple as getting an API key. And most of our partners will just hand us, an API key on your behalf to like do this on a trial basis. Or if you already have a pre-existing relationship,
Yeah.
I'll say that if you go to any of the major providers, say, hey, I want to trial you guys right now, send me over your DPA, right? And you can get that through your legal process relatively quickly. We can get you connected with them hours.
That's pretty insane. Hours.
Yeah, and how it works in nuts and bolts, right? Jordan, you've seen this, right? It's like, as Nate mentioned, a lot of the data you need is already there in the network requests, right? So us sitting and orchestrating from the network layer by connecting to us via CDN gives us access to all of that data, right? So if it's a add to cart with a product category that exists in the URL, we have access to that, right? So we'll be able to grab that, build a workflow, call out to some third party that you may want, or utilize that data in some logic to take action, right? Yeah. We showed you a demo of how that works, right? We have the ability to demo with the information that exists on our prospects, our non-customer sites. So we can actually do that. Our marketing team wants us to make a plug. Like if you want to see a demo, hit our website, www.specprotected.com to see a demo. But all of that data is accessible via configuration. We'll get it, orchestrated in a matter of minutes.
So yeah. I do want to talk about that real quick because so just so everybody knows, like when you're CDN, all of your data goes through your CDN. Like there's just no way. So with Spec actually integrated at the CDN level, they're going to see all of the data. So everything, like that's where I'm talking about those 40 million missing things it has to go through them. So they have to be able to see it. And that's pretty insane. So one of the things too, as we wrap this up right now, we'll talk about where people can find you, how they can find you, where they can see you in person. But I do want to talk about demos because I want anybody that's interested to contact these guys and see a demo, because that's how I first really got going with you guys. Was you guys came to me and showed me a demo, and you literally brought up my own site, and it was my site, and you were clicking on things in real time and doing actions, doing interdictions, showing me the data, device profiling it. It was awesome. So can you talk about a little bit? I know how you guys do it. I know how you guys do it with by loading an instance and the thing, funneling all your own traffic through that instance into the site, but it's really cool. So can you just talk about a little bit about how you guys do demos as we wrap this up, and then talk about where people can find those demos in real, like not only emailing you, which we'll put up the emails in just a minute, but where they can see you in person coming up.
Yeah, Patrick, go ahead, take it.
Yeah. So how we do that is exactly through the network, right? So we pipe our SE's laptop through our platform. We point it at, say, www.iherb.com. We'll see all of the network requests coming through, right? And I think the beauty of it was, I think we first asked you, Jordan, we're like, hey, what are you trying to do, right? And you shared with us like, oh, I want to get this vendor put in place prior to checkout. And then we showed that actually happen, right, through your existing checkout flow, right? And I think that's really kind of what we're after, understanding what leaders like you and your organization are trying to do, and showing how that orchestration lift doesn't have to be through your existing resources, right? How we can accelerate your resources, basically deploying what the business teams need in a much easier, more streamlined and faster, and if I may, better way than it's been done before. Where you can see us, we'll be at MRC Santa Clara. We'll be at Money 2020. There's probably some other conferences we'll try to attend. We'll be sponsoring other, probably Fraud Boxer in Q4. We'll have other sponsorship opportunities and webinars coming up as well. And then, as always, like hitting our website, you can request a demo, and we'll connect with you in real time.
So like the inside secret line, just for the people who are here and watching this, we do hold a number of these like private roundtable fraud fighter dinners regionally from time to time. Like please reach out to Patrick or I, and we'll let you know when the next one's happening in your area.
Everybody, I really encourage you to get the demo. Like just make the phone call and make the demo just to see what the new hotness looks like. It's kind of fun. It's really, really, really fun. They're great people just to talk to. They're great people to go to dinner with. So join any of those little roundtable dinner things that might be happening regionally in your area. But like they said, www Spec Protected. I am going to put up a slide at the end of this where I'm going to leave up until the live stream on LinkedIn actually catches up to where we are, because I believe it's a little bit behind right now. So I'm just going to put that up as we sign out of here, and then everybody will just, I'll leave it all going, leave it live just to make sure. Because like I said, everybody, thank you for bearing with me. This was the very, very, very first live stream of all time that I've done. So I've been a part of other ones, but usually it's a different, it's more of a webinar capacity, not live on LinkedIn. They click out. I wanted it to be live on LinkedIn so other people could see it, find it, all of our friends. I want to thank you guys for first of all being the sponsor of Frau Boxer for all of Q2. That was really, really nice. I hope you guys got what you needed out of that. I'll see you guys in Q4 again for that one. But I want to thank you again for giving me all of the time that it took to put this together, all the notes, giving me your time. I know you guys are busy people. You do have a business to run, and it's a cool business. I hope to see you guys at these conferences. I'm going to try and get it out to Money 2020. I'm going to try and get to MRC Santa Clara. But I will put up all of the information in any sort of post thing that I do. I'll probably put this audio up as an episode on the thing as well. And then I'll try and put the video up, depending on if LinkedIn lets me, as a post on there too, so people can actually watch. So yeah, thanks again, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Jordan. It was a pleasure being on.
Thanks for having us, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure of mine, guys. Go ahead and just you guys leave. I'm going to leave this on until I see it catch up over here, because I don't know what's happening. And right now I'm going to go ahead and share our wonderful little banner. If it gives me a second over here to move this, I need to make it full screen. Actually, this is happening in real time, everybody. This is proof that we are live right now. We are live. It's full screen over here. I gotta go around the mic on there. And let's see. Let's get the right one. I believe this one has our. Let me just double check here. See, live, guys, live. Boom. How are we looking? Is that us? Is that our emails
Perfect.
right there?
That is us and our emails.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's been fantastic, Jordan.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining. You guys are more than welcome to drop, and I will just leave this going for the time being.
Awesome.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Jordan.
Bye, guys.
Bye.